I was upstairs playing Twister with friends when I heard my mother scream. By the time we reached the deck, she was crouched over Lily, my baby sister, her hands shaking, mouth pressed to hers, blowing frantic breaths. The air smelled of chlorine and fear. Lily's arms dangled limp, her small chest unmoving. 6 weeks later, Lily was gone. She'd had Down syndrome, and Mom told us she'd been watching her at the pool. Watching meant 1 minute. That's all it took. After the funeral, Mom sealed herself inside Lily's untouched bedroom. She barely spoke, barely ate. Dad tried coaxing her out with gentle words, but she was unreachable. Then, without warning, she shifted from ghostly silence to manic determination, talking fast about adoption like it was a miracle cure. 2 weeks later, Emma arrived. She was just shy of 2, wide-eyed and shy, nothing like Lily except in age. That didn't matter to Mom. She dressed Emma in Lily's clothes, handed her Lily's toys, and accidentally called her Lily. Soon, the accidents stopped being accidents. Whenever I mentioned my sister's name, Mom's face hardened. "Stop living in the past," she'd snap. She refused to let me visit Lily's grave. What hurt most wasn't that she'd brought Emma into our lives. It was that she erased Lily overnight. She bragged to relatives about how quickly Emma learned things Lily never could, her voice full of pride that stung like betrayal. Meanwhile, I was invisible. She skipped my soccer games, forgot parent-teacher conferences. When I won a school model airplane competition, something Lily had always loved watching me build, she barely glanced at it. As the first anniversary of Lily's death approached, I suggested a small memorial. Mom cut me off. She'd booked a family photo shoot that day. "But what about Lily?" "There'll be plenty of anniversaries," she interrupted. Something cracked in me. "You're pretending Lily never existed. You can't just replace her." Her slap came fast and hot. Lily was suffering. Emma is everything Lily couldn't be. Dad stood frozen in the doorway, his face stricken. That night, he sat beside me on my bed, his voice low. "Something's wrong with your mother. I've ignored it too long." We talked for the first time about the truth, about divorce, custody, and the fact that Emma deserved to be herself, not Lily's shadow. When relatives arrived for Mom's photo shoot, I couldn't stay silent. "Mom has erased Lily," I told them. "Emma isn't her replacement." Mom's face went pale, then flushed red. "Don't ruin this." "You called Lily broken," I said, my voice shaking. "She was an embarrassment," she screamed. The room fell silent. My aunt quietly picked up Emma, holding her close. Family members exchanged shocked looks. Someone called Child Protective Services. Within days, Emma was living with my aunt, and Mom was gone. Dad and I started therapy. For the first time, we spoke about Lily without fear. Months later, we decided to clear out Mom's storage unit. That's when I found it. A manila envelope hidden behind old files. A $500,000 life insurance policy on Lily, dated 18 months before her death. My hands trembled. I carried it to Dad, and his face drained of color as he read it. We kept digging and found 2 more policies, one on me, one on Dad, all taken out around the same time, all for large sums. Before Lily's death, Mom had been in serious debt. Afterward, everything was paid off. We didn't want to say it out loud, but sitting there under the cold hum of the storage unit lights, we both knew. This was no coincidence. We didn't sleep that night. The insurance papers sat in a neat stack on the kitchen table, untouched except for the faint creases from Dad's hands. The clock ticked too loud, and the coffee we'd poured hours ago had gone cold. Neither of us wanted to say the words hanging in the air. By morning, Dad called a lawyer friend, not to file charges, just to understand insurance policies better. I hovered in the hallway, straining to hear. When he hung up, he looked 10 years older. "Not unusual to have policies," he said quietly. "But the timing and amounts, they raise questions." Questions? That was a polite way of saying suspicions. We started gathering everything. Financial records, old statements, anything that could connect the dots. That's when we found her credit card bills from before Lily died. Debt. Piles of it. But afterward, 0 balances. Paid in full. I began having nightmares. I'd wake up gasping, seeing Lily floating in the pool, but in the dream, Mom wasn't screaming for help. She was standing still, just watching. Dad noticed. Some nights he'd come into my room, sit in the dark until I fell back asleep. He never said anything. He didn't need to. Then, one afternoon, the doorbell rang. Dad opened it, and my blood ran cold. Mom stood there, thinner, hair cut short, dyed darker, dressed in a plain sweater and jeans. She said she'd been getting help and wanted to talk. I grabbed Emma, now back living with us, and took her upstairs. I didn't want her seeing this. From the top of the stairs, I listened. Mom's voice was calm, measured. She talked about therapy, medication, understanding her grief better. Said she knew she'd been wrong. Then she asked to see Emma, just for a short, supervised visit. She had no rights anymore, she admitted, but maybe we could work something out. Dad told her he'd think about it. That should have been my first warning. Mom never accepted anything without a fight. After she left, Dad and I argued. I reminded him about the insurance policies. He said we didn't know what they meant. He wanted to believe people could change. I didn't trust it, though I couldn't explain why, just a gut feeling. Over the next 2 weeks, Mom texted Dad daily, asking about Emma, sharing insights from therapy, apologizing for specific things. The messages seemed sincere, and slowly, I saw Dad start to soften. She brought proof, paperwork from her therapist, a pay stub from a daycare job. She made it look like she was rebuilding her life. Dad agreed to a supervised visit at a public park. She brought bubbles. Emma loved bubbles. Within an hour, they were laughing together. Dad relaxed. I didn't. I started watching her closely. She never pushed too hard, never broke a rule, but she asked Emma very specific questions. What time do you nap? What do you eat for breakfast? Do you sleep through the night? To Dad, it sounded like casual conversation. To me, it felt like reconnaissance. I checked the daycare she claimed to work at. They'd never heard of her. When I confronted her through Dad, she laughed. Oh, I got the name wrong, and produced a new pay stub. The lies piled up, small and reasonable on their own, but together forming a pattern I couldn't ignore. Then she started asking for longer visits. Maybe Emma could come to her apartment. Dad refused. She accepted it and asked again the next week. And the next. One day, I followed her. She didn't drive to the apartment she described. She went to a rundown weekly motel on the edge of town. I took pictures, showed Dad. He confronted her. Another smooth excuse. Between places, embarrassed, didn't want to seem unstable. Dad wanted to believe her. I couldn't. And that's when Emma's nightmares began. Emma's nightmares started small, just waking up crying once in a while, but I knew something was off. When I asked her about them, she just shook her head and clung to me. Mom had an answer ready, of course. She's just getting attached again. The visits are too short. She's upset when she has to say goodbye. She said it like we were the ones hurting Emma by keeping the time limited. Dad started wavering. I could see it in the way he paused before answering her texts, in the way he stopped shutting down her suggestions immediately. I got desperate. Started recording every single conversation with her on my phone. Most were harmless, talking about toys or the weather, but sometimes she'd slip. Comments about how split custody is hard on kids, or Emma would be happier with more stability. One day, when she didn't know I was listening, I caught her on the phone saying something about timeline and how everything is going according to plan. I played it for Dad. He brushed it off. Probably about her therapy goals, he said. I wanted to scream. Then she made her first real mistake. During a park visit, Emma tripped and scraped her knee. Nothing serious, just a little blood. But Mom panicked, scooped her up, and started walking toward her car. I'm taking her to the hospital, she snapped. Dad had to physically block her. It's fine, he told her. She just needs a Band-Aid. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her face twisted in pure rage, then smoothed out again like it had never happened. Dad saw it. Really saw it. We went back over the recordings together. Suddenly, the scattered lies and innocent comments looked different. Connected. Strategic. Dad's lawyer friend told us to keep documenting everything. Mom noticed the shift instantly. She accused Dad of poisoning me against her, claimed I was just a traumatized kid who couldn't forgive. She threatened to get her own lawyer and push for grandparent rights. The perfect therapy patient version of her was starting to crack. She showed up at our house unannounced with a birthday present for Emma, even though her birthday was months away. Dad told her she couldn't do that, and she started crying on our porch. Neighbors saw. I was sure that was intentional. Next time, she brought my aunt with her, the same aunt who'd taken Emma in when everything first happened. Mom had been working on her, spinning the story about how therapy had changed her. My aunt started pressuring Dad to give her a second chance. It wasn't just about us anymore. Mom was building an army. She went to Lily's grave, leaving flowers and toys, taking pictures, and posting them online with captions about healing and forgiveness. People who didn't know the truth flooded the comments with hearts and praise. She was building a public image. And in the background, she was watching us. We found out she'd shown up at Emma's playgroup without permission. The leader, not knowing the situation, had let her stay. That's when Dad hired a private investigator. The guy looked ordinary, drove a boring car, but he found a lot in a short time. She'd only been in therapy for 6 weeks, not the month she claimed. The daycare job? Real, but she'd been fired after 3 weeks for being too intense with the kids. Her apartment? Behind on rent, facing eviction. She was building her perfect mother story on lies. But as our lawyer warned us, lies weren't enough to win in family court. We needed her to make a bigger mistake. We wouldn't have to wait long. The papers arrived on a Tuesday morning. Thick, official, and reeking of trouble. Mom was petitioning the court for formal visitation rights. She claimed Dad and I were unreasonably keeping Emma from her loving mother. The petition painted her as a reformed woman, unfairly punished for past grief, while we were the villains denying a child a relationship with her own parent. Dad slammed the folder shut and muttered, "She's going for blood now." The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. Best case scenario, the judge keeps visits supervised. Worst case, she gets partial custody, maybe even unsupervised overnights. The thought made me sick. From that moment, everything became evidence. We documented every word she said, every gift she gave, every tiny boundary she pushed. The private investigator dug deeper. He discovered she'd been meeting with another parent who'd lost custody, sharing strategies on how to get kids back. At visits, she was flawless. Too flawless. She played with Emma, laughed in all the right places, and never lost her temper. To an outsider, she looked like the perfect mom. But every so often, I'd catch her staring at Emma like she was measuring something. Then she started using Lily. One Saturday, she told Emma she had a sister in heaven who loved her very much. Emma came home asking about her heaven sister, and I felt my blood go cold. We had planned to tell her about Lily gently, when she was older, not like this, not weaponized. By the time the first court date arrived, our family was split down the middle. Some relatives had seen the manipulation and supported us. Others believed her act, calling Dad heartless and me brainwashed. The courtroom was small, the air stale. Her lawyer painted her as a grieving mother who had overcome her mental health struggles. Ours presented the lies, the inconsistencies, the insurance policies. The judge listened but didn't seem convinced by either side. She postponed the decision for 2 months, saying the child's best interests would guide the outcome. Those 2 months were torture. We took turns sleeping so one of us was always awake at night. The investigator found more proof of her digging into our schedules, maybe even watching us. The line between paranoia and reality blurred, because with her, paranoia was reality. Then we caught our first real break. During a visit, she let her guard down, just for a second, and told Emma she'd already looked at private schools near her apartment, and that soon, they'd be together more. The words hit me like a punch. Dad's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Our lawyer added it to the file, but we still didn't know if it would be enough. The second hearing was worse. She came armed with glowing character references, her therapist, her landlord, even the daycare that had fired her. They all swore she was stable and safe. The judge still gave her more time. 4-hour supervised visits instead of 2. Reevaluation in 6 months. It felt like losing, even though she hadn't won custody. 4 hours was twice as much time for her to plant seeds in Emma's head, and she used every minute. She gave Emma gifts almost identical to Lily's old toys, taught her to keep secrets from us, starting small, then growing bolder. One Saturday, she returned Emma 15 minutes late. We panicked. Emma casually mentioned they'd been to Mom's apartment. That was against court orders. Mom claimed Emma was confused, but our investigator confirmed they'd gone inside for 20 minutes. The judge gave her a warning, but nothing more. It was a warning for us, too. She was pushing, testing, seeing what she could get away with. The worst part? Emma was starting to believe her. She'd ask if she was good enough for us, if we still wanted her. The cracks were forming, and Mom was chipping away at them every week. And then she made her biggest mistake yet. It happened on what was supposed to be just another Saturday visit. Emma came back with red, swollen ears, tiny gold studs glinting through the infection. She was crying so hard she hiccuped, clinging to Dad's shirt like she was afraid we'd vanish. She begged me for it, Mom said, smiling like she'd done something sweet. It's a mother's job to make her daughter happy. Dad's voice was ice. You don't have that job anymore. Under court orders, any body modifications, even ear piercings, needed parental consent. Mom had skipped the consent entirely, taking Emma while the supervisor was in the bathroom. It wasn't just defiance. It was a test, a flex of control. The infection was so bad the doctor had to remove the earrings immediately. Emma screamed, and I felt something in me snap. The judge didn't see a sweet, rehabilitated mother anymore. She saw a woman who had just blown through a clear boundary and hurt a child in the process. Visits were slashed back to 2 hours in a sterile, supervised facility. No parks, no zoo, no outings. Mom tried to smile through it, but the cracks were obvious now. She made passive-aggressive comments to Emma, just quiet enough to dodge the supervisor's ears. You know who really loves you. Some people don't want us together, but they're wrong. It was poison, drip-fed over plastic toys and awkward tea parties. Emma started clinging to us again, asking if Mom was mad at her, if she'd done something wrong. We reassured her, but the damage was there, invisible fingerprints left on her mind. Then came the night I woke to the sound of the back door rattling. I thought it was the wind at first, until the lock clicked. Dad grabbed the baseball bat from beside his bed. I ran to Emma's room, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear his footsteps on the stairs. Then I did hear something. A woman's voice. Hi. Frantic, familiar. She's my baby. You kept my baby from me. It was Mom. The crash of a chair. Dad's voice, firm but shaking. Leave now. I've called the police. I grabbed Emma, carried her to the bathroom, locked the door, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. She was trembling in my arms, whispering, "What's happening?" The cops came fast. They found Mom in the kitchen, a cut on Dad's forehead where she'd thrown something at him. Out in her car, they discovered a bag of Emma's clothes, toys, and cash, plus paperwork for a rental car and a motel 3 states away. She'd planned this for weeks. That night, sitting in the living room with Emma sleeping between us, we knew one thing for sure. Mom hadn't just been playing for visitation. She'd been planning to take her, forever. The emergency hearing stripped her of all rights. A restraining order kept her 500 feet away from us. It should have been the end. But the private investigator found something worse, a $1 million life insurance policy on Emma, dated just weeks before the break-in. Lily hadn't been an accident. Emma had been next. The police reopened Lily's case. Everything after that, the trial, the guilty verdict, the life sentence without parole, felt less like justice and more like relief. Mom made threats even as they dragged her away, swearing she'd get out and take back what's hers. But this time, we knew she'd never get the chance. For the first time in years, the house was truly quiet. Emma could sleep without checking the locks. Dad didn't need to keep the bat by his bed, and I could breathe without wondering if a shadow outside meant Mom was back. We'd survived her, but surviving her wasn't the same as forgetting.